have a vote. And in the voting, they tell me that I can vote for the front court players. They told me I didn't have to choose between Jokic and Embiid. I could actually pick both. And so guess what I did? I voted for them both as first team. Did Joel Embiid get snubbed as a first team All-NBA? Yes, he did. I believe with what he had to endure this year, with the nonsense that Ben Simmons created, with all of that stuff going on in Philadelphia, and then ultimately a James Harden coming into the squad at the expense of Simmons and Seth Curry and Andre Drummond and 2 first-round picks and all the stuff that he had to go through, still playing the way that he played, still having the Philadelphia 76ers be the threat that they were. We don't know what would have happened in the Miami series had Joel Embiid not hurt his thumb, A, and B, cracked a bone in his face that ultimately forced him to miss the first 2 games of that series against the Miami Heat. Who knows what would have happened, because we saw what kind of impact he had the next 2 games that he showed up. So let's take that into consideration as well. I voted for him as my league MVP. I had an issue with him getting blown out by Brooklyn and James and Kyrie and Kevin Durant's visit there after the James Harden trade, okay? And I had an issue with him losing a close, hard-fought game against Jokic and the Denver Nuggets in Philadelphia, although he had better numbers that game. But I think in totality, when you look at what he put forth throughout the season, I believe if there was ever a day to make an exception about 2 big boys being on the first team together, it would be this one. I think Jokic and Embiid should have been first team, JJ, at the expense of Jason Tatum, who should have been second team All-NBA.
The irony of Joel Embiid having more votes, more first-team votes than Jason Tatum, and Jason Tatum getting in as the first-team guy, when last year Jason Tatum's votes were split between guard and forward, and he had more total votes and points, I should say, points than Kyrie Irving. But because his votes were split, Kyrie Irving got third-team all-guard. That cost Jason Tatum somewhere between $30 and $35 million. So it's a little ironic, all right? What needs to the voting system is terrible. And the idea, by the way, that you could split guys based on position, ultimately we've seen it twice in the last year where 2 guys got screwed because of that voting system. Let's make it very easy. Let's just Klay Thompson. Let's make it very easy. Let's just vote for the 15 best players. The 5 guys who get the most points are on the first team, then the second team, then the third team. Let's make it very easy. And by the way, we don't need to have a third-team center. We don't need to have a third-team center. Why? There's so many good wings and so many good guards. And I'm sorry, there's years where you're literally going, I got to put this guy third team. I got to put this guy third team.
Yes.
On the games played, Chris, by the way, I think there's generally speaking, there's like a cutoff. And I don't know, it's sometimes it's 65 games, sometimes it's 68 games. You know, I look at that third team. The fact that the Miami Heat were the first team, first seed in the Eastern Conference, and they had no representation on the All-NBA team. Jimmy Butler had a great regular season. He's been even better in the playoffs. He didn't make the third team because he only played in 57 games. Now, Pascal Siakam was well-deserving. That's not a knock on Pascal Siakam. Had Jimmy Butler played 70 games, 71 games, he probably ends up in that third team slot. So I do think they take into account the games played. There's no guideline, though, for is the cutoff 62? I agree. There needs to be a number. To be All-NBA, you got to play 62 games, 64 games, whatever it may be. So there's some clarity there. I think I talked to enough. Stephen, I know you have a vote. I don't have a vote. I've talked to enough voters. And the criteria on all this stuff is so up in the air. There needs to be some guidance from the league office on MVP, on most improved player. What is the criteria for most improved player and on the All-NBA stuff, especially because we negotiated to have the clause for the Supermax kick in if in that fourth year you make All-NBA. With that much money on the line, there has to be better guidelines and guidance from the league office.
JJ, just so you know my position, first of all, I completely agree with everything that you said. You're right on the money. You get no disagreement from me, and I love the top 15 players and just call it a day. And I abhor the fact that making that all-NBA team, first, second, or third team, could ultimately determine whether or not it cost you $30 to $40 million. I'm one of those guys, JJ, just so you know, Mad Dog, as well. I wouldn't blame Klay Thompson if he never spoke to the media again. That year that he was held out of being on an all-NBA team,
yeah.
and he had lost out, and they put Kemba Walker, who was having a sensational season in Charlotte, no doubt. I voted for Klay Thompson, of course, but we've cost that man $30 million at least. We're talking about a 3-time champion, one of the top 5 shooters in the history of basketball, who went to 5 straight NBA finals. And in the throes of all of that, we voted against him and cost him over $30 million. If ever there was a person that should have disdain for the media, it is that guy. No excuse for it. So I completely agree with Jay. They got to change it.
I just want to add one thing, Stephen A., and I just want to add, you know who had a great day yesterday? Trae Young. Because he made the third team, he gets that $30 to $35 million bonus.